Hey folks, Rebecca Ryan here for another edition of Futures Friday. I know I've been missing y'all too. There's no doubt about it. And I just want to thank all of you for your patience. Um, Here's real life evidence that scenario planning matters, that you need to be ready for things not to go to plan. A couple of weeks ago, I was in the Arctic Circle in the way north of Norway, not the farthest part, but in the Lofoten Islands. I fell, I broke my wrist, and I had to come back to the United States for surgery. And it meant we had to cancel our trip. It meant I had some unexpected surgery. But listen, what do they say? People make plans, God laughs, or life is what happens when you're planning other things. So I've been offline for a while I had this guy repaired and casted, and now I've got the cast off. And there are a lot of silver linings on this. I have learned how to use a lot of my MacBook's accessibility features. Working with my non dominant hand, I think, is rewiring my brain. And I have an excuse to go to bed at 7:30 at night if I want to. Healing takes energy. That is a scientific fact. I checked with two scientists on Wednesday night about that. So, welcome to this edition of Futures Friday. It is Friday, June 19th, and it is the last time I will be sending out a Futures Friday from this location. My wife and I are moving, and starting in July, I will be doing Futures Friday from my new home office. So I'm really looking forward to it, but it's also very bittersweet. I'm looking out here to my left, and it's going to be time to say goodbye to Lake Monona. So I've enjoyed living here. Living on a lake is a wonderful way to be reminded of the constant presence of nature in all of its violence and stillness and beauty. But listen, many of you have done this before. People do it all the time, and I'm looking forward to the next chapter. All right, let's jump into it. Merci, thank you. The first thank you for today goes to a Dutch sociologist whose last name is Polak, Polak. So he died in 1885. He was very active in the 40s and 50s. And the enduring impact he has made on my work as a futurist is he has this game. Well, it's called the Polak Game or the Polak Exercise. And for any of you who were with us at Futurist Camp at the Sleeping Lady Resort in Washington last year, you played it with us. We're going to play it again at camp this year. But the Polak Game basically asks two questions. And from these two questions, you sort yourself into a 2 by 2 matrix. So the two questions are: one, thinking forward over the next 10 years, or you can fill in the length of the horizon, thinking over the next 10 years, how optimistic are you about the future? And depending on whether you're optimistic or pessimistic about the future, you would move into, horizontally, sort of into the more pessimistic or the more optimistic. And then the question is, how much agency do you feel you have? More agency or less agency? More agency or less agency. So, taken together, what you have is a sense of where you stand about your general optimism about the future, if the future will be better or worse, and about your own agency about the future. Now, it won't surprise you, for those of you who've been following me for a while, that I tend to be a little more optimistic than pessimistic about the future. And I absolutely bet on our ability to affect that future every single time. But what's interesting about the Polak Game, and the reason I play it at futurist camps, is because most people don't know, they've never played the game before. And so they haven't pulled those two pieces apart. So your feelings about the future and your feelings about your agency about the future are two different things. And it's important to be able to pull those apart. But then the second thing is that once you know where you stand, and then you see where, in some cases, your other colleagues stand or other people stand. It's useful to have a conversation, amongst and between the four sort of boxes, if you will, on this 2 by 2 grid. So for the pessimistic people who feel like they have no agency, to talk to the optimistic people who feel like they have a ton of agency. What are each side missing, and so forth. Another application of this is, I often invite, if we've got managers or senior leaders who are at Futurist Camp, I will say, where do you think your people would be? Because often leaders feel that they have more agency and their employees feel like they have less agency. And having less agency is kind of a recipe for despair. So, to the extent that we can, always trying to help our people have more agency. All right. So, the thank you this week is to the Dutch sociologist Polak and to his game, the Polak game. All right. Second thing here, let me get to it in my notes. Let me put on the glasses that help me see what I'm reading here. Oh, mailbag. Okay. A writer asks, how do I get my board ready to think more futuristically for their next strategic plan? So, this is from an executive director. And my sense is that she feels like we can't just do the same strategic plan we've been doing for the last 10 years, 15 years. I think in nonprofits, what's, what's makes me sympathetic towards leaders is that their board is changing all the time. Most board terms are 3-year terms. Some board members stay for 2 terms, some stay for much longer, but the majority turn over. And so you may have a new board every time you do a strategic plan. And guess what? The board, it's not their job to know everything that the organization does. So what ends up happening is for the board, the strategic plan is brand new. But if the executive director has been there for any length of time, the strategic plan is a rinse repeat of the last strategic plan. So I love this question about how to help a board think more futuristically so that they get a more dynamic plan. So I'm just going to tell you what I would do if I was in your position based on some of the things that we've done. The first thing is I would gamify it. The sit and get meetings where board members listen to subject matter experts, that has very limited viability unless it's interactive. So we just hosted an event in Columbia, South Carolina, where at lunch we had a subject matter expert from another community who's facing the very same thing that they are come in over lunch, and there was a facilitated discussion, and then people had the opportunity to ask questions. That's really important, right? The second thing to do, so that would be like time boxing, making it interactive. Point two. Point three, what I started with, was to gamify it. Like, how can your board get engaged with the process of strategic planning or thinking about the future in a way that is fun, that feels like a game? So the Polak game would be a really easy one to sort of start with. Like, where are we as a board on these two questions? Where do we think most of our donees are on this question? One of the things we use is this game called The Big Sort. It's a card game about the future. That would be a cool way to sort of gamify it. And then to maybe help the board think creatively about what if questions. And I'm going to get to some more questions kind of at the end of this, but time boxing their involvement so it doesn't feel like they're in a hostage situation. Two, using subject matter experts, but letting them drive the questions, or at least a good share of the questions. And third, finding ways to gamify it. The final thing I would add is I think this is I talk about this frequently during keynotes, but I think it's really helpful for boards to think about this. If you think about a time horizon and you're right on the middle of it. So this is a timeline. I'm making it as wide as I can here on Substack. This is maybe 20 years ago. This is 20 years in the future. And you're sitting right here in the middle. Most boards do their planning by looking backwards. Physically, that's ridiculous. You would never walk to your neighborhood grocery store backwards, right? You walk to the future, you walk forward by facing forward. And that's what boards need to do. So rather than look at our greatest hits of what we've always done, while important, what you want to do if you're going to bring foresight into your strategic planning is look to the future. So identify 10 to 15 trends that your board is going to have to deal with over the next 5 and 10 years and ask, are we ready for these? And if not, how are we going to get ready for these? So this is all possible, and it's a great question. Again, if you're a board member, strategic planning for the nonprofit you serve on is brand new to you, but it's not new to your executive director. So using some more future-facing techniques and tools can vivify it for everybody. All right, pardon me while I look at my script. Right, what's on my desk? Okay, I'm just gonna show you what's on my desk because this, I think, is the easiest way to tell the story of my desk right now. Keep in mind, I'm moving in 1 week. So that's our new Futurist Camp Workbook, Volume 4. Ty and I just taught a class yesterday. My journal is over there, completely neglected. Why? Because I can't write right now with my right hand. And those are my discharge papers on the end of the desk from my wrist surgery. Nair is a company that my friend Gordon is on the board of, and I stole that swag from his house. And then I've got a glass of empty milk over on the far corner, plus other paraphernalia around town. All of this to say, I am up to my armpits in healing, in work, in moving, and of course, with all the other sort of nonprofit work that we all do. Okay, now here's my try this at home. Try this at home for this week, Friday, June 19th, is to ask better questions. To ask better questions. Most of us ask very surfacey questions. How are you? That's the most common one, right? What are you working on? Even that, right, can kind of get you a very surface oriented, oh, I have a project here, I have a project there. So if you want to be a better futurist, I think it's important to ask better questions. So one of my favorite ones is, what's something you're really doing these days that lights you up? You've probably heard me mention this before, but I brought a few other examples. So here's one. Like, say you're in a meeting and you can feel it starts feeling like an echo chamber. Here are some questions that can get you out of the humdrum and into the whiz bang. One of them would be something like, I wonder if, or like, what if we approach this from the completely opposite perspective? Right? And just sit there for a while and brainstorm what that could look like. Another one would be a root cause question. So rather than talking about the surface issues are like, oh, voter turnout is so low, blah, blah, blah. Well, what causes low voter turnout? What really causes low voter turnout? Because maybe that's where we need to focus. Like I think about Mandami in New York City. I don't know him. I don't live in New York City. I didn't vote for him, but I do know that Priya Parker was involved in his events. And Priya is the one who wrote The Art of Gathering. And one of the first events he had was a paper shredding party. Evidently, this is like an issue for him. He loves to shred paper. He loves to get rid of paper. And it's hard to get paper shredded in New York City. So at these paper shredding parties, there was a DJ, there were paper shredders, right? And it solved the issue of how do you get people interested in civic issues? Well, throw a party, a useful party, shred paper while dancing. It's an amazing idea. So ask some of these root cause issues because it's gonna crack open opportunities that you maybe haven't thought before. Don't just stay stuck in the way it's always been done. Try to get under the skin of what's really going on. Um, Here's one of my favorite ones. If I ever facilitate for you, you're going to hear me ask this during a meeting. Who can make a respectful counter argument to this issue that we all seem to agree on? Groupthink terrifies me. It terrifies me, especially among senior leaders, especially when the CEO is in the room, because I always worry that people are just doing whatever the CEO thinks should be done. So, by inviting this question of who can make a respectful counter argument to what we all seem to be agreeing is true, you're intentionally inviting provocative additional ideas that could actually make whatever decision you make far stronger. Um, and then one more is how do you really feel about this? Like, so I'm thinking about, I don't know why, but I'm thinking about our client Orlando. And when we were starting this project, they had had a prior futurist who had worked with them. And the final deliverable, it was a little too out there for the client. And I wish I'd asked this question because when I was with the team, the senior management team, I could just tell there was like a little bit uneasiness. And I even knew that there was this prior futurist work who was kind of lingering in the background. And I should have asked this question like, how do you guys really feel about this? Because it would have just helped me and our project be so much more effective if I just would have given space for people to say, like, how they really did feel. They're the subject matter experts on the tone and the attitude and the ambition of their organization. And I could have done a better job like deferring to them. Now, I want to leave you with one final example of how powerful questions uncork these like insightful and creative and imaginative um, results. And I think, we should all be using them, whether we're futuring or not. But especially if we want to build brighter futures, we need to ask better questions. So here's the example. Southwest Airlines, whose ticker symbol is LUV, love. Southwest Airlines built their company on this question: how can we empower our employees to create genuine happiness for our customers? How can we empower our employees to create genuine happiness for our customers? There is so much good in that question. There's like not one extra word, and every word means something. So, how can we empower our employees? That means it doesn't need a big chain of command. You don't need five signatures for a new roll of toilet paper. We're going to empower. How can we empower our employees, people on the front line, right? This is the Ritz-Carlton promise. We are ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. And I know back in the day, it was any employee at any level at Ritz-Carlton could make a decision that would be up to $750 of value for the guest if it would make the guests stay better, more memorable, happier. So again, Southwest, how can we empower employees to create this idea that it's a creative act, right? To create using their own humanity, something that is so human and personal, to create genuine, not for smile happiness, but to create genuine happiness. The kind of happiness where after the safety briefing is done, people clap or whistle. Where when people get on that plane, they are cracking up because of the antics or whatever is happening. How can we empower employees to create genuine happiness for our customers? For our customers. This is a powerful question. It's the kind of question that creates possibility. It's the kind of question that invites creativity, imagination, innovation. And at least in the case of this airline, it's the kind of question on which the organization was founded. So that's your try this at home. So thank you for the Polak game, how to give your board a little more foresight and a little more fun as you work on your strategic plan. And then finally, a few ways to ask better questions. Take care, everybody. I will not see you next Friday because I will be moving, but I will see you the Friday after, which is July 3rd. Take care and see you then. Oh, PS, you guys, I forgot about this. I forgot to bring you my signal of the week. The signal of the week, and I linked to the NBER, National Bureau of Economic Research working paper. And thanks to my signal panelist, Lauren Fernandez, for this. Younger workers are experiencing higher unemployment in jobs that are remote, not because of AI, but because they don't have the benefit of sitting next to people who have more experience. Interesting. And so the paper is about the power of proximity and how important it is for proximity for younger and older workers to transfer knowledge back and forth. That's the signal of the week. It'll be interesting to see how return to work, at least in some job classes and categories, is affected as a result. Thanks for hanging out for the PS. See you in a couple of weeks.